Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. It only feels like 5 minutes ago since I was talking about the preview for the Wood Elves, something which did catch us a little bit on the hop, as we were, I think as a collective, definitely expecting the Beastmen to come out before the Wood Elves, and it's something that Games Workshop went on to acknowledge, that there were delays in getting those Beastmen ready to hit the shelves. However, an article has hit Warhammer Community today showing what we can expect in that pre-order set starting from next Saturday. It's a little bit buried, potentially, amongst all the stuff that's been floating around about the Horus Heresy new edition, about all the drops for Age of Sigmar. But let's focus very much on what's coming up for the old world, and that is fundamentally the forces of the Beastmen Brayherds. So what are we seeing? Well, first up, as always, we're seeing an Arcane Journal, 48-page supplement with information about 2 new special characters. In this case, Cromwell and Goros Warhoff. We've heard about these characters before. I've talked about them before. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail when it comes to the Arcane Journal. At least to say it's coming very, very soon. Obviously, accompanying that, we've got the Brayherd Battalion. This is an interesting box set, I think. Now, I do come from a little bit of knowledge weakness, not being a Beastman player, but I'm looking at a box which consists of 30 Gors, 30 Ungores, and 1 big monster, and I'm not finding a huge amount of fault with that. That seems a little bit unusual, perhaps, when you're looking at a box that's largely infantry-based, and Warhammer the Old World is very much a game where cavalry and big monsters are king. Having faced the Beastmen actually just once, I've seen just how nasty Gors can get when their rules start to pile on top of each other and get a really powerful effect. Add in the ambushing or skirmishing niceness of Ungors, well, they can be a proper pain in the derriere. Not got much experience of the Gorgon, but it fits the big monster stereotype. Excitingly, I think for modelers, all of these things are going to be plastic, which really does make it a lot easier to assemble and get use out of, I think, these models, because there's less hazards associated with building, carrying, using, less chipping, less prone to breakages and stuff like that. Other models we're expecting to see in Wave 1, we've got Cromwell, the Prophet of Ruin. I think this is a pretty nice model overall. It does suffer from the things I think all Beastmen suffer from, and this is very much through the eye of the beholder here, is there is just too much brown. Beastmen, quite a muted colour palette. It's not something that grabs me. It's not something that particularly excites me. And I'll be honest, I think looking back into the early days of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, when the stories around the aesthetic of Beastmen was quite different, that appeals to me a little bit more. What do I mean? Well, if you look back to things like the Conrad trilogy of books, for example, what were the Beastmen? Well, actually, they were more the outcast, the mutants, the strange, rather than being that weird combination of goat and man. And I think this combination of just really things thrown out of society for various reasons, the true children of chaos there, in that sense, is far more interesting, certainly from a visual point. But that aside, what else do we know about Cromwell? Well, this is a Forge World resin model and is going to come with a marker for the spell Leering Spirit. Next up in the Warhammer Community article, we've got a discussion of some returning lords. So we've got your Bray Shaman, we've got a Beast Lord, and we've got a Doom Ball ready to lead the units of Minotaurs. Big, hairy monsters that I think also have the ambush special rule. Now, while ambush, I think, by itself isn't necessarily the strongest rule in the game, having a lot of things ambushing can really pose your opponent questions and force them to perhaps act in a way they wouldn't normally want to, allowing you to nick elements of the tactical and initiative advantage. In what's presumably plastic, we're seeing obviously the Gors and Ungore kits coming out. They're both going to appear in the Battalion box set, so as per normal, they're going to be making an appearance, and we're also going to be seeing the Bestie Gors. So pretty much an elite infantry unit with great weapons being made available for the forces of the Beastmen from the off. From the monster perspective, in addition to the plastic Cygor/Gorgon kit, we're also going to see a resin model for the Cockatrice and Jabaslive. I don't know how good these are, I've not come across them, but they are big models, and let's face it, they are quite interesting looking figures that could form a nice centerpiece to your army, even if they're perhaps a little bit less than super effective. We've got the other special character returning as a metal figure, that is Goros Warhoff. He's coming back as a metal model, as said, alongside a Centaur Lord, a set of 5 Centaurs, a set of Centaurs with command options, the Tuskstraw Chariots and Razor Gors also making an appearance. I'll acknowledge but quickly move by the fact that we're obviously going to get reference cards and dice for this particular force before ploughing into the world of Made to Order, which is in relation to High Elves and Wood Elves. And at this point, as much as I'm saying, yeah, the plastics look interesting, they're useful, etc., for the Beastmen, at this point in time, I'm going to, and do excuse my self-indulgence here, have a little bit of a grumble when it comes to Made to Order. Now, as a concept, I can understand why Games Workshop do it. It's a chance to release an alternative sculpt for a limited amount of time in a nice organised way, in a way that also really produces an element of FOMO, the fear of missing out, when people hopefully jump on the bandwagon and grab hold of the miniatures that they want to sell. And if you're able to buy these models, or at least something that represents those models for use in your armies, then I don't massively have a problem with it. However, and it is a big however, what I don't like is when Games Workshop use this opportunity to sell models that you might need for your army that you don't really have another source through Games Workshop itself to get hold of. Now, I know with the rise of 3D printing, with alternative sculpts, etc., it is a lot easier to pad out your armies using non-Games Workshop figures. But there are, the purists out there who only want their armies to be Games Workshop. And of course, then there's the people who are reliant on playing at Games Workshop events and Games Workshop stores, etc. And they do have quite strict rules about what you can and can't take. So if you want to take a particular unit, if you can't buy it from Games Workshop, that is going to be a problem and you won't be able to use it. So what is my grumble? Well, my grumble really comes to those units on Made to Order where you can't use another Games Workshop figure to achieve the desired result. So if you are an Orc player, for example, and you want a particular model for your Orc on Wyvern, or a particular giant model, and it comes up for Made to Order, great, because in the normal ranges you can access a Wyvern, you can access giants. They might not be the sculpts you precisely want, but something will be available that does the job. Step forward the forces of the Empire and the War Wagon as a Made-to-Order piece. Now, I'm not expecting to see loads of War Wagons all over the shop when it comes to Empire armies. But it is an option that people may want to take. And if you're not either in a position to make the purchase, not an Empire player, or for some reason late to the party in wanting that model, you're not going to be able to get it through Games Workshop. They've sold it for a limited period of time and then they've stopped. The War Wagon has no other model really that's directly suitable, as far as I'm aware, for use as that War Wagon in your Empire armies. And I think this does make it really difficult for players. They're going to have to, if you want one, as I've done, reach out to third-party printers to obtain the figure that you want. But overall, I don't think that's great for the hobbyist, for the collector. It just helps to drive up those prices if you're going to have to go through eBay, through Vinted, whatever it is, to try and find the figure that you want that's popped up for a short period of time and is no longer available. Grumbling aside, however, after what was quite a number of weeks of no information to really talk about when it came to Warhammer the Old World, to see Wood Elves and Beastmen coming out thick and fast, along with a few of the extra High Elf models that we learnt about a week or so ago, that's all really useful stuff. It's all exciting news, and it's rebuilding the momentum for Warhammer the Old World. Something I'm particularly excited for is just helping build and maintain that interest. Question is, are you going to be buying into any of the stuff that's going to be coming out for order anyway next week? If you are excited, if there's something you're particularly going for, a particular angle you want to take, do let me know, as always, down in the comments below. Really enjoy reading what people have to say on this sort of thing. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you have, do consider a like and subscribe. It's a great way of helping a small channel such as this one. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.